My name is Lena Hart, and I'm the Chief of Police for Brookridge County. Most days, that title means respect, order. People listen when I speak. But in the perfectly manicured neighborhood of Cedar Ridge Estates, it meant nothing, at least not to one particular woman, Karen Donnelly. She's the president of the Homeowners Association. Late 50s, always dressed like she's 5 minutes from a garden party, with a clipboard in one hand and judgment in the other. The kind of person who sees rules not as guidelines, but as sacred commandments etched into stone. When my husband Chris and I moved into Cedar Ridge 5 years ago, we did it for our daughter, Mia. We thought this gated community, with its tree-lined streets, neighborhood watch, and crime-free reputation, would be safe, quiet, normal. We were wrong. It started the day after we moved in. A neatly folded letter arrived in our mailbox, printed on expensive stationery with gold trim. Welcome to Cedar Ridge. Kindly ensure your lawn adheres to our regulation height of 2.5 inches. We look forward to a mutually respectful living arrangement. It was signed in cursive, Karen Donnelly, HOA president. I remember laughing. Chris rolled his eyes and said, "Lawn police? You sure we didn't just join a cult?" Back then, it was funny. A month later, the letter stopped being polite. Children's toys left in the front yard are a violation of HOA Rule 4.2. Mia's pink soccer ball, one ball, on our lawn. Holiday decor must be approved and removed within 7 days of the event. We'd hung fairy lights for her birthday. They were down in 3. Then came the fine, $75 for unsanctioned sidewalk chalk. Mia had drawn a rainbow. It wasn't about property values. It wasn't about rules. It was about control. I tried to ignore it. I had bigger battles to fight. Actual crime, not chalk doodles and grass height. But Karen's obsession grew bolder. I saw her patrolling the neighborhood like a self-appointed sheriff, jotting down infractions on her clipboard. I'd watched her take pictures of people's yards from behind bushes. Always alone. Always watching. Still, I kept the peace. I'd seen what power struggles could become, and I had no interest in letting one woman's ego disrupt my home life. Until the day she crossed a line. It was a Tuesday. I remember because Tuesdays are my late shift. I was sipping coffee on the porch, watching Mia walk to her bus stop just 2 houses down. 10 years old, bright red backpack, hair in braids. She was humming. 5 minutes later, she was back, eyes wide, shoulders shaking, trying not to cry. "Mom," she whispered. "That lady yelled at me." My heart dropped. "What lady?" She said I couldn't wait at the stop, that I was trespassing and ruining the neighborhood. She said kids like me didn't belong here. Her voice cracked. She said she was calling the police. A cold, sharp rage tightened in my chest. "Karen?" Mia nodded. That was it. The silent treaty was over. I walked her to school myself that morning, one hand gripping hers, the other wrapped around my coffee like it might keep me from boiling over. She didn't say another word. Neither did I. But my thoughts were loud, furious, and clear. Karen Donnelly had made a mistake. She didn't know who I was. She didn't know what I was capable of. And she sure as hell didn't know what happened when someone came after my daughter. That morning, as the school door swallowed up Mia, I stood there a moment longer. Something had shifted. Karen thought she was untouchable. She believed the rules she clung to so tightly made her powerful. What she didn't realize, what she couldn't possibly understand, was that I wrote the rules for a living. I enforced them. And when they're abused, I break them. She thought this was a game. But now it was war. And the first shot had just been fired.
2 days passed. I expected an apology, even a forced one. But nothing came, no call, no note, not even a sheepish glance from Karen Donnelly when I passed her silver Lexus idling by the mailbox cluster. Instead, another notice appeared, slipped beneath our door like a veiled threat. Unaccompanied minors are prohibited from loitering on HOA property. Failure to comply will result in a formal citation. No signature this time, just the HOA letterhead and the implication. We were being watched. Chris was furious. He wanted to take it straight to the board, maybe even the news. But I told him to wait. I wasn't ready to go public. Not yet. I wanted to see how far she'd go. The next morning, I didn't walk Mia to the bus stop. I watched instead from the kitchen window, coffee in hand, every muscle tense. The sun hadn't fully risen, but the street was lit in a soft, gray glow. Karen was already outside. She stood at the corner like she owned it, arms folded, lips pursed into a thin line. Her visor tilted forward, like she was trying to block out the sunrise. Or Mia. My daughter stood her ground. Shoulders squared, chin lifted, just like I taught her. Karen said something. Mia flinched. That was enough. I was out the front door in seconds. Karen didn't notice me until I was halfway down the sidewalk. Step away from my child, I said calmly. Firmly. She turned slowly, her mouth already forming a smirk. Ms. Hart. Good morning. I was merely reminding your daughter that this corner is technically common property. Unaccompanied minors aren't allowed to loiter. It's in the bylaws. She's not loitering. She's waiting for her bus. Karen's smile widened, like she was speaking to someone who just didn't get it. I've received several complaints about her presence. Some neighbors find it disruptive. Disruptive? She sings. Loudly. She fidgets. It's not neighborly. I took a step closer. You're harassing a 10-year-old. I'm enforcing the rules, Karen replied, all sugary venom. If you have concerns, you're welcome to file a formal rebuttal. But I would caution you, our association has a long memory. So do I thought. But I didn't say it. Instead, I looked her straight in the eye. Here's my formal rebuttal. You ever speak to my daughter like that again, and you'll be dealing with me. Not as your neighbor. Not as a mother. But as the chief of police. Her smile faltered. Just slightly. But enough. Have a good morning, Karen. I took Mia's hand and walked her the rest of the way. When the bus pulled up, she hugged me tightly and whispered, Thanks, Mom. I nodded, but I didn't smile. Because this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. That evening, an envelope was taped to our door. Inside was a printed notice. Notice of HOA review. Due to repeated violations and hostile behavior, your property will be under review for compliance infractions. You are expected to attend a formal hearing. It was dated for Friday. The board. The hearing. The trap. Karen had made her move. But I wasn't walking into that room unarmed. Thursday night, I stayed up late at the dining room table, reviewing the HOA charter line by line. I'd requested a copy years ago, buried it in a filing cabinet, and nearly forgot about it. Now it read like a battlefield map, full of vague clauses, loopholes, and arbitrary language. But there was something else, too. A pattern. Over 30 families in Cedar Ridge had been cited in the past year alone, most of them new residents. Young couples. Parents. Renters. Karen wasn't enforcing rules. She was gatekeeping. Policing the neighborhood like it was her kingdom, and anyone she didn't like was a threat. She wasn't protecting property values. She was protecting power. Friday came. The hearing was held at the clubhouse, a red brick building with white shutters and a flagpole out front. Inside, it smelled like lemon polish and stale cookies. The board sat behind a long folding table, papers stacked in neat piles. Karen sat in the center, flanked by 3 silent men and a woman who looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. I walked in alone. Calm. Professional. Unintimidated. Karen straightened. Ms. Hart. We're here today to discuss multiple concerns regarding your conduct and that of your child. I trust you received the notice. I did. We've had several complaints from multiple neighbors about noise, property damage, and verbal aggression. We're obligated to address these concerns. Are any of those complaints in writing? Karen paused. They were delivered verbally. Then they're hearsay. She blinked. Excuse me? As chief of police, I'm familiar with the concept. You're making accusations with no documentation. That won't hold up in court, let alone in front of a housing commission. The board members exchanged glances. One of the men cleared his throat. Karen recovered quickly. Regardless, your tone toward board members has been inappropriate, and your child. My child, I cut in. has been harassed at her bus stop by the HOA president. That's not just unethical. It's criminal. Karen leaned forward, lips twitching. Are you threatening legal action? I'm warning you, I said softly. Back off. Your authority ends at the sidewalk. You have no legal right to monitor or reprimand children in a public area. And if you confront my daughter again, I will press charges. For harassment. Possibly endangerment. Silence. Then, the woman at the end of the table spoke up. I think we need to adjourn and review the charter. Karen's jaw clenched, but she nodded.
Dismissed.
I walked out without another word. In the parking lot, I looked back at the clubhouse. Through the window, Karen stood stiffly, arms crossed, staring after me like she'd seen a ghost. She thought I'd roll over. Thought I was just another parent with no power, no connections, no spine. She was wrong. She didn't know it yet, but her war was already lost. Because I wasn't just fighting for my daughter. I was about to expose every abuse, every fabricated citation, every neighbor she'd bullied into silence. And when I was done, there'd be no HOA left to hide behind. The next morning, I knocked on the Millers' door. They lived 2 houses down, quiet, friendly, and always kept to themselves. Susan opened the door with her toddler on her hip and worry in her eyes. She fined us for sidewalk chalk too, she whispered before I even said a word. I nodded. You wanted to stop? She exhaled. More than anything. By sunset, I had 6 names. All parents. All families that had been hit with vague violations, silent citations, and Karen's carefully constructed terror campaigns. I didn't ask for sympathy. I asked for evidence. Emails, letters, photos of citations. All carefully documented. One neighbor, an elderly widower named Mr. Holcomb, handed me a folder with receipts for nearly $2,000 in maintenance penalties. His offense? Hanging wind chimes on his front porch. She said it invited loiterers, he muttered. Karen wasn't running an HOA. She was running a fiefdom, backed by fear, enforced through silence. But I had something she didn't. A badge, a reputation, and neighbors who were done being intimidated. By midweek, I filed a complaint with the State Housing Authority and forwarded a copy to the County Compliance Office. While the HOA operated independently, misuse of power and fabricated fines fell squarely under local jurisdiction. But I wasn't done. I also filed a request for public records access, copies of HOA meeting minutes, violation reports, and all documents bearing Karen's signature. The paper trail she thought would protect her was about to unravel. The more I dug, the darker it got. A retired teacher had moved out within 6 months after 3 separate fines for improper curtains. A young black couple had received 4 citations in 2 weeks, one for excessive barbecue smoke, another for non-neutral paint tones, even though their home was HOA-approved beige. It was systemic. It was targeted. And it was cruel. And people were finally ready to talk. I hosted a gathering at my home that Friday evening. Just coffee and cookies. No official agenda. But one by one, the neighbors came, tired, frustrated, and eager to be heard. We shared stories. We took notes. We took back control. This isn't about rules, I told them. This is about power. And if we let Karen keep it, things will only get worse. Someone asked the obvious question, what can we do? I smiled. We remove her. Under HOA bylaws, a sitting president could be removed by a 2/3 vote of the homeowners. It required signatures, coordination, and a special election. A long shot, but not impossible. Especially now. That weekend, we canvassed. We knocked doors, passed flyers, and shared stories. Some residents slammed doors. Others nodded quietly. But many opened their doors and listened. We weren't troublemakers. We were parents,
Teachers.
veterans, longtime residents. We weren't tearing down the neighborhood. We were protecting it. Karen, of course, fought back. By Monday, she issued another round of citations. This time to me, the Millers, the Holcombs, and 3 other families who had joined the campaign. Unauthorized signage. Congregating without HOA approval. failure to maintain neutral tone of exterior lighting,
Petty.
transparent,
Desperate.
but it backfired. Because now people were watching her. And not just us. The county sent an investigator to follow up on my complaint. Quiet, professional, clipboard in hand. I saw him photographing houses, interviewing residents. Karen tried to escort him off the property. She failed. And when word got around that the police chief herself had filed a formal grievance against the HOA president, well, let's just say the power dynamic shifted. That night, Chris hugged me as I sifted through signatures, 32 out of the 48 homes needed. We were getting close. "I'm proud of you," he whispered. I didn't respond right away. I was thinking about Mia, about the way she used to hum on the way to the bus stop, the way that joy had been stolen by one woman's bitterness. "No one messes with my kid," I said softly. And I meant it. But I wasn't just fighting for her anymore. I was fighting for all of us. The people Karen bullied. The kids she silenced. The neighbors she drove away. The reckoning was coming. And Karen Donnelly had no idea how fast it was closing in. The petition was ready. 43 signatures. Neatly arranged, notarized, and triple-checked. More than enough to trigger a vote of no confidence against Karen Donnelly. We submitted the documents to the HOA secretary, Mrs. Traynor, a soft-spoken woman who'd always stayed on the sidelines. But as she took the folder in shaking hands, she whispered, "It's about time." The emergency election would take place in 7 days. Karen didn't take it well. By morning, she'd issued a cease and desist letter to every homeowner who signed the petition. The letter, stuffed in cheap manila envelopes and taped to mailboxes, warned of legal repercussions for libel, slander, and unlawful disruption of community governance. Thinly veiled threats, written in full legal jargon and desperation. It only fueled the fire. Even the homeowners who'd previously stayed neutral began to turn. No one liked being threatened for exercising their rights, especially not by someone who considered herself judge, jury, and queen. The board tried to maintain appearances, but the cracks showed. 2 members resigned within days, citing personal reasons. Rumors swirled that Karen had pressured them into silence for years. With her allies gone and the vote looming, she was running out of moves. Except one. On Thursday morning, I stepped outside to find 2 police cruisers parked in front of my house. At first, I thought there'd been an accident. Then I saw Karen standing behind them, arms crossed, sunglasses on, trying to look casual. She glanced away when I locked eyes with her. An officer approached me, polite but firm. "We received a call regarding illegal surveillance activity. Someone reported that you were filming neighbors without their consent." I laughed out loud. "You mean my doorbell camera?" He shifted awkwardly. "I think that's what this is about, yes." Karen was grasping at straws. The footage she was trying to suppress, grainy video of her yelling at my daughter, delivered to the county investigator, was legally obtained. From my own property. I invited the officers in, showed them the camera setup, and offered them coffee while they reviewed it. By the time they left, they were apologetic. "She's really pushing boundaries," one muttered before getting into his cruiser. I stood at the window as they pulled away. Karen's Lexus was still parked by the clubhouse. She watched the officers go, her face pale and tight. She knew it was over. But I wasn't finished. The same day, the county emailed me a preliminary report, multiple violations of community housing laws, misuse of HOA funds, and potential civil liability for discriminatory practices. The cherry on top? The investigator had forwarded his findings to the district attorney's office for review. Friday night, the emergency HOA meeting was held in the community clubhouse. The room was packed. Folding chairs were set up in rows, residents standing shoulder to shoulder, murmuring, whispering, staring. Karen sat at the head table, posture ramrod straight, lips pressed into a smile, so tight it looked painful. I took a seat up front, Chris by my side, Mia at home with a sitter. Mrs. Traynor called the meeting to order. "As of today," she announced, "we have verified enough signatures to proceed with a formal vote for the removal of President Karen Donnelly under HOA Clause 4.1b. The room quieted. Karen stood. "I would like to make a statement," she said crisply. This community has thrived under structure, accountability, and respect for rules. If I've made difficult decisions, it's only because I care deeply about this neighborhood." Someone near the back scoffed audibly. She ignored it. "I understand that emotions have run high. But let me be clear. This is a smear campaign, orchestrated by a few loud voices who cannot accept order." I rose slowly. "I'd like to respond." Mrs. Traynor gave a cautious nod. I turned to face the room. "I moved here because I wanted peace. A safe place for my daughter. A home. What I found instead was a regime built on fear, fines, and favoritism." Several heads nodded. "I've watched Karen bully children, intimidate parents, and target families that didn't fit her picture of acceptable. That's not order. That's control." I turned back to Karen. "You didn't build this community. You broke it. And now, you're losing the one thing you actually cared about, power." There was no applause. Just silence. Heavy. Final. Then Mrs. Traynor cleared her throat and passed around the ballots. Each homeowner marked their vote. It took 15 minutes. When the last paper was collected, Mrs. Traynor tallied silently at the front, her fingers trembling slightly. Finally, she looked up. "The vote is 39-4. Karen Donnelly is hereby removed as HOA president, effective immediately." A wave of exhaled relief passed through the room. Karen stood, stunned. She didn't argue, didn't shout. She just gathered her purse, nodded curtly to no one in particular, and walked out the back door. Her reign had ended, not with a fight, but with a retreat. But the story wasn't finished. As residents began to leave, some smiling, some weeping quietly with relief, I felt a tap on my shoulder. It was the county investigator. He'd attended quietly in the back row. "Just a heads up," he murmured. "The DA's office is moving forward. We'll be issuing subpoenas for HOA records. Financials mostly. If you have anything else, now's the time." I smiled. "I've got a whole folder." He nodded. "She may not be HOA president anymore, but she still has to answer for what she did." Karen thought stepping down would save her. She didn't realize her crimes didn't disappear with her title. Justice was only just beginning. 2 weeks after the vote, the neighborhood felt lighter. Kids played in front yards again. Sidewalk chalk returned. Wind chimes danced in the breeze. For the first time in months, the air didn't feel tight with unspoken tension. Karen was gone, but not forgotten. She'd vacated her post and locked herself away in her custom-renovated colonial on Willow Bend Lane. The house stood as a bitter monument to her brief reign. The porch lights stayed off. No more daily patrols. No more unsolicited flyers. Her silence was deafening. But justice wasn't about her retreat. It was about accountability. And the wheels of that justice were turning. The county investigator had followed up with a subpoena, one that Karen could no longer ignore. HOA records, including financial documents and internal emails, were now in the hands of the district attorney's office. And it didn't take long for the charges to surface. The news broke on a Tuesday morning. Karen Donnelly, former HOA president, was being formally investigated for embezzlement, harassment, and civil rights violations. The headline made local radio and even a brief TV segment. But what hit harder than any broadcast was the impact at home. Neighbors stood in driveways, stunned. One woman wept quietly, sharing that Karen had fined her family nearly $3,000 over the course of a year, none of it traceable in the HOA's official financial reports. The DA's office confirmed what many feared. Karen had funneled HOA funds into personal home improvements, landscaping, a security system, even custom fencing. She'd also used HOA authority to silence and punish families of color and low-income homeowners, targeting them with more aggressive citations than others. That was the final nail in her coffin. The DA filed formal charges within a week. It was surreal watching her let out of her house in cuffs, dressed in a pressed blouse and designer sandals, chin up like she still had control. But her eyes said otherwise. Gone was the woman who'd stormed bus stops and terrorized children. In her place stood a disgraced bully, unmasked and powerless. My phone buzzed endlessly that morning, Texts from neighbors, officers, even some city officials who'd followed the case. Mia, thankfully, had already left for school. Chris met me at the front door, coffee in hand. "You see the footage?" he asked. I nodded. She didn't even argue. She knew it was over. There was no joy in it, no celebration. Just a deep, resonant satisfaction. Because this wasn't about revenge. It was about standing up to someone who'd used power as a weapon and showing that, even in the quietest neighborhoods, no one is above the law. Later that week, the new HOA board held its first open meeting. And this time, everyone showed up. Gone were the clipped, icy sessions dominated by Karen's voice. Instead, residents spoke freely, proposing ideas, raising concerns, even laughing. We elected a new president, a retired school principal named Evelyn Park. Calm, fair, and firm. The kind of leader who listened before acting. One of her first actions? Voiding all citations issued in the last year. "I've reviewed the documentation," she announced calmly. Most of it was unfounded or selectively enforced. Effective immediately, these fines are null and void. A cheer went up in the room. I wasn't on the board. I didn't need to be. My role wasn't governance, it was protection. And I had protected what mattered. Later that night, as I tucked Mia into bed, she looked up at me with those big brown eyes. "Is the mean lady gone forever?" I brushed a lock of hair from her forehead. "She's not coming back." She smiled. "Can I use my glitter chalk tomorrow?" I laughed. "You can paint a rainbow across the whole sidewalk if you want." She grinned and rolled over, the comforter tucked under her chin. Downstairs, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat with Chris on the back porch. The crickets sang in the warm evening air, and for the first time since moving here, I didn't feel like I had to watch my back. He nudged me. "So, what's next?" I thought about it for a moment. Life. Finally. But I also thought about others, about neighborhoods still under the rule of tyrannical HOA leaders, about families afraid to speak up. And it stirred something in me. "I might start a blog," I said. "Help people navigate HOA laws. Give them tools to fight back." Chris raised his glass. From police chief to HOA whisperer, someone's got to do it. Because while Karen was just one person, there were many like her, people who hid behind rules to control, who preyed on quiet families too scared to push back. But not anymore. Not here. We'd reclaimed our peace, our community, our voices. And if anyone ever tried to take that away again, well, they'd have to go through me first.